Welcome to Make It Make Sense. We are Marlene and Paulina, two research assistants at the Obama Institute for Transnational American Studies at JGU Mainz.
In this podcast, we take you on a deep dive into the world of our study program. Together with guests from all throughout the discipline, we talk about everyday societal topics you might not have guessed are connected to our field.
Join us in making sense of the issues that surround us and, most importantly, have fun listening. Welcome back to Make It Make Sense.
So we're glad to be back, and thank you all for tuning in again. We're really excited about this episode.
And a very warm welcome to today's guest, who, might I add, I have been pumped to have on our podcast, Dr. Julia Velten.
Hi guys, thanks for having me.
Yes.
Right, so what we like to do on Make It Make Sense, as you listeners should already know, is we have our guests introduce themselves a little, if you're down with that.
Down enough.
Yeah, sure.
All right.
So
if not, you can leave. So,
yeah. In that case, can you maybe just tell us a little bit first about yourself and maybe your area of interest in the American studies?
All right. So my name is Julia Velten. I've been working at the Obama Institute for way too long, way too many years to count. I have studied here at JGU, so I've basically been here my entire life. And I have done my PhD work in the field of aging studies, actually. And then I switched focuses to the environmental humanities. And right now I'm working on climate change fiction and what we as a society can learn from reading climate change fiction and engaging with it. And at the same time, in my teaching, because I also teach, I like to focus on current issues, which also includes climate change, but also current issues in politics and culture of the United States. I think it's more important than ever to talk about these things.
yeah,
and thank you for talking with us about that.
Yeah.
And with that kind of being your current area of interest, do you have like a favorite climate change narrative, or are your personal reading habits like vastly different from that?
I mean, of course, I have maybe not a favorite, but the novel that fascinated me the most in recent years was The Deluge by Stephen Markley, which I also taught a seminar on last semester. Shout out to my class. Because it it's a highly complex, very, very long novel that kind of intertwines different perspectives and different narratives on climate change, politics, activism, populism, and everything else going on in the world. So basically speaking to all of my interests. And I read that privately first, out of sheer interest in it. So yes, climate change fiction is kind of my private reading interest as well. But sometimes I also try to actively read novels that are not connected to my work, which is actually hard to do when you're in American studies because everything is kind of connected to American studies.
That's so interesting. And I haven't read The Deluge yet, but ever since you told me about it, it's on my TBR.
And you have, I mean, that's such a nice bridge to today's topic, because you also have dabbled in that field a little bit.
A little bit.
So maybe just also to direct that question to you, do you have like a favorite novel or movie or piece of work in that direction?
That is a tough one because I have read a couple, including some short stories, but I think you already mentioned like movies, and what stuck with me the most was actually a movie, and it's a Netflix film called Don't Look Up. And I did actually end up writing a term paper about it and a conference paper.
Oh, nice.
So because I loved it so much as like a research material. And the conference is still coming up. I think the conference has happened by the time you're listening to this. But yeah, so I'm very excited about that. Do you have watched anything in that direction?
Well, I have watched Don't Look Up. When it first came out, I think it was quite popular. I loved it too. It was one of those movies I feel like when you watch it, you and it kind of like sticks with you and you keep thinking about it even after you've watched it. I mean, while preparing for this episode, we, of course, did some research to kind of like get into the whole
We actually do research here, y'all.
Yeah, and I realized I actually haven't read or, I don't know, seen too many climate change fiction pieces or narratives. When I Googled it first, actually Google suggested to me that Ice Age: The Meltdown apparently counts as a climate change narrative.
Sure,
I have seen that movie, so I guess that counts. But yes, I'm all the more excited to get into today's topic, especially with you as our guest.
Yeah, and I think with that we're ready to take a closer look at climate change narratives, if you haven't gathered that by now. And maybe, Julia, you can tell us a little bit about what first sparked your interest in the topic?
Sure. I mean, I think the first or the biggest thing for me was the relevance of it. I mean, there's always this big talk, are the humanities still relevant in today's society? Where? And yes, of course they are. But also I find that some topics and issues are like screaming that relevance at us more than others. And for me, climate change is something that is on my mind, that is happening, that is affecting all of us. And so my question was, how can we, as the humanities in American studies, kind of help understand climate change better and kind of make a contribution to make the world a better place, which sounds pathetic, I know. And also is, of course, one step at a time. Make the better world a better place, one tiny little step at a time. But like make some contribution.
I think that's nice.
Isn't that what we all want, is to feel like our work is important and that we can contribute something? And that's exactly what you're doing, I think. So that's great. So usually we also start our discussions with a little pop culture reference, as you know. And for that, in today's episode, I would like to look at back at the movie that you mentioned in the beginning, Marlene, which is Don't Look Up, right?
Yes, and I love that because I think the movie is a really great example for multiple reasons. For one, it is immensely popular, right? With a cast of A-list celebrities, extremely high success rates. In fact, when I kind of looked into it a little bit more, I found a Deadline report that said that in 2022, meaning very shortly after the movie was released, it immediately climbed to be Netflix's second most successful movie with an insane number of hours streamed within very little time. And second, and probably more important for our conversation right now, is that it is an incredibly effective allegory for climate change without even once mentioning it by name.
Yeah.
And that is so interesting to me.
Yeah, exactly. If I remember correctly, so the prompt of the movie is a hit of a comet that's inevitable and it's coming straight for Earth. And it's going to destroy Earth in its entirety. And everyone's kind of having different reactions to it.
And the actions and reactions of the public really mirror social behaviors toward climate change. But again, climate change never once mentioned.
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty crazy. So, Julia, to get back to you, you have used the movie in one of your seminars as well.
Oh,
so,
have I?
And thank you.
Marlene, where did you get to know the movie?
Yes, I have to admit it was maybe her seminar that I heard. But I liked it.
Thank you.
Exposed.
I've been exposed.
Right. So, Julia, from your experience, is Don't Look Up a typical, like a classic crisis narrative, especially considering how satirical it is?
Yeah, actually not at all. And I mean, since you mentioned it, the satire element is, I don't want to say unique, but special for crisis narratives. And also using an allegory instead of like pointing to the actual problem, and at the same time I mean, you would think, okay, so it's a satirical movie that tries to get a message across by over-exaggeration, and it uses allegory. So just from the sound of that, it kind of sounds like it's a very subtle movie, which is not at all.
It really is not.
Nope.
So that on the one hand, of course, makes it special in the way it tells the story, but it also kind of makes it special in the way it was received, right? Because it was criticized for being too spot on a criticism of how U.S. society especially deals with climate change without, as you said, never mentioning climate change. So the movie makers could react by saying, what are you talking about?
We didn't.
We did, like,
is the word climate even in the movie? No, it is not.
Exactly. Like the movie is, the movie is what you make of it, right? So, but of course, it is pretty clear that we're talking about climate change. In order to know that, however, you need that kind of cultural knowledge to understand what the mechanisms behind climate change or social and cultural debates of climate change are, right? That we have the climate change, or we have climate change deniers, or people who do not want to look up at the comet, and we have people basically yelling at them, hey, you kind of have to look up because that thing will inevitably destroy us if we don't do anything about it. And then you have like all these different stakeholders, politics, economy, media, scientists, and they all basically talk to each other without understanding each other and without listening to each other. And that is, again, kind of typical for a crisis, especially a climate crisis narrative. So yes and no. The way it is made, not typical and kind of special. The message it conveys or the topics it touches upon, that is pretty similar to other narratives as well.
And are those then the kind of stories that you will be looking at in your research?
Yes and no again. The world is a gray area, folks. It's always yes and no.
And I love that.
And everything in between. So I'm looking at climate change, at all kinds of climate change narratives. Right now, I'm only looking at novels, so fictional novels, not films. So I have done research on Don't Look Up, but for the project I'm working on right now, it's only novels. But from like within the genre of climate change fiction, I try to be very well rounded or look at different types of narratives within that genre. So I have a coming of age story. I have stories about climate change that are dystopian. I look at stories about climate change that are placed very much in the here and now. So I don't have satire and I don't have film. And I don't have allegory. So they are pretty spot on climate change.
So pretty much not that.
Exactly. It's like the opposite.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's great too, because that way we can cover a wide range of topics. And what I do love about this conversation with you right now is that you're actually currently in the process of researching all of this.
Right, because other guests that we've had on the show have been done, quote unquote. I mean, are you ever really done with anything in academia?
Anyone who ever wrote a paper know that you're never really done with anything. But
everything I hand in has a document title, Good Enough for Now. So
yes.
It's never done.
Still,
precisely.
You're more in the beginning stages than other people we have talked to.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So before we go deeper into the topic of climate crisis, let's perhaps take a little detour and talk about your process, your research process. So you've mentioned that you kind of switched topics and went from aging studies to climate change narratives. So what inspired you to do that? Because that's quite the big step to take, right?
Sure. Do you want the short, boring answer?
No.
I'm going to give you both. So the short answer.
This is an audio podcast.
You always want the long answer. No. So the short answer is in German academia, in American studies, in the humanities especially, it makes sense after your PhD to switch topics and switch fields. So you show the world, your academic peers, the academic world, that you are well-versed in all kinds of different areas and topics, and also that you are able to kind of thoroughly get into a new topic quickly. Right. So I had to find something that is far enough away from aging studies. That's
to have the best of both worlds, like Hannah Montana.
Exactly.
Great. Got it.
In American studies, we all have to be Hannah Montana.
Okay.
That's the gist of it. Okay.
That's amazing.
I'm going to go buy a wig now.
And then, I mean, the world basically was open to me, right? I could have chosen anything. I could have gone into 18th century poetry, which is not my thing. So I didn't do that. And then again, relevance was a question, right? I started thinking about, I'm always very interested in how information is brought across and how people speak to each other and how people try to explain things to one another, and sometimes without knowing or understanding speak different languages than their audience. So when scientists try to explain something to me, I don't get what they're saying because they speak their academic science language, which I cannot understand, right? And I think in many areas of life that leads to confusion and problems, because whenever I maybe don't understand something that is important, but think I understand it, that kind of opens the door for wrong information, fake news, people who make stories sound very pretty, convince me of their version of things that might not necessarily be true. So that is like the core interest or the core drive of everything that I think about, basically. And you can do that with all different kinds of topic, right? You can talk about medicine, COVID, medical research, which we also do in American studies when you think about a field called medical humanities, right, where we talk about how medical narratives are brought across. And you can look at it on social media, and you can look at it through films, but you can also look at it in literature. So my question initially was, how can any big topic or how can literature or written text contribute to a better understanding of basically any big important topic of humanity? And then, of course, the biggest, most important topic for humanity or for me at this point in time is the climate crisis. And so I decided to look at these narratives with the question of, first of all, how are different forms and types of knowledge presented within these novels, and how are they maybe a playing field of these conversations that people have with one another? Because in climate change novels, you often have politicians talking to scientists, talking to lay people, and it's in the story, it's in the narratives, it's a punchline, right? It's always funny that they don't get each other.
Yeah, the transfer of knowledge is kind of like...
Exactly. It rarely works out, but then again, sometimes it does work out. So maybe we can learn from these mechanisms of communication, right? And then going deeper into the topic, I realized that there's so much more that these novels offer, because they basically touch upon not only climate change and the transfer of scientific knowledge or knowledge about climate change, but about how do we want to live as a society? How does politics work? How should politics work? What is good politics? What is a good politician? What is good communication in terms of political speech, right? And so I broadened the scope a little bit, and I'm now looking at basically the broad question of what can climate change fiction teach us on top of giving us all these insights into climate change? Because it only ever has been read as specifically addressing climate change, which it does, right? And it's also still part of my research. But so I'm also asking, what does it do beyond that?
And with that in mind, I mean, climate change narratives really do speak to your larger interests in the field of American studies then, right?
Yes. No, I'm not interested in American studies at all.
We actually hate this.
No, I think it really does. I mean, first of all, like a huge amount of climate change narratives stem from the United States, right? Mm. And a huge amount of pop culture references stem from the United States, and they are consumed all over the world, right? And that's like the whole or one part of a transnational idea of American studies, to think about, okay, all these things are produced within the cultural framework of the United States, but consumed here in Europe. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's important to look and understand at these products specifically, because I want to know what I'm consuming. And I want to understand what I'm consuming.
Is that critical thinking you speak of?
What? No, never. And that again goes for all kinds of areas, right? That goes for films, but for literature, but also for political discourses, current political discourses that kind of happen in the United States and then kind of migrate into the speech acts of other politicians in the world for some crazy reason. So that's like one thing, right? And connected to that, the United States has this understanding of itself that it is the exceptional country, right? American exceptionalism. It is the city upon a hill, the role model that we're all supposed to be looking at. If you're wondering what that is, study American studies and you'll learn about it in Culture Studies 1. And while we have learned to criticize and to question that notion, right? Part of it in the reality that we live in is there when we look at the power that the United States holds in global politics, right? And the United States, for better or for worse, has power, has agency, and could be a role model. Yeah. It decides not to be when it comes to climate change, but it could be. And
it has the potential.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and I cannot unlock that potential, right? But also, it also has the potential to influence things into different directions, right? And what we can do is kind of make transparent how these strategies of influencing kind of work to kind of make people sensitive to it, which is why I think American studies as a whole, but then also talking about climate change within the framework of American studies is so important.
Yeah. That's really insightful. And it made me think, like, to get back to our pop culture reference again, made me think about the movie Don't Look Up, because that's an American piece of work, right? And there's very specific references to specific, I mean, we have movements in the movies that have red baseball caps with slogans on them, which also, makes...
And the exceptionalism is really, written in all caps in that movie.
Yeah, so we definitely have that lens on it as well. And us over in Europe, for example, or other people in other parts of the world consuming media, for example, movies like that, especially when they're that popular, that's something that...
Yeah, the pen is mightier than the sword, people. Narratives have power.
And especially, like, considering that, as we have seen with the movie, the words climate change, like, don't even have to be mentioned for us to consider a work under that lens. So going a little bit more in that direction, could you maybe give us, like, a little rundown of what, in layman's terms, you would consider a climate crisis narrative to be, or maybe what elements must be present for you to take story in the widest sense into consideration?
Well, apparently it's Ice Age. So.
I mean, yes. So that really begs the question: what is a climate crisis narrative?
I mean, and that the fact that is mentioned under the genre, right, already tells you that there is not really a clear-cut definition at all. So. The most basic definition is all narratives that deal with climate change. the end.
Mm-hmm.
So what we typically have is narratives that have some sort of breakdown moment, and then you have a dystopian scenario that follows that, and people have to kind of rebuild society out of the ashes of the old world. That would be a very classic scenario.
Mm-hmm.
But also with the debates about climate change becoming more and more present, all kinds of narratives have catastrophe scenarios that are not dystopian. For instance, I've read a novel called Dry by the Schustermans, wrote that novel called Dry. It's a basically young adult fiction, coming of age narrative, where the scenario is that in Southern California, all the water reservoirs run dry, and for a week there's no running water. And you have a dystopian scenario without having a dystopian scenario. The novel also does not mention climate change. It is a scenario that happens, and we can understand that it happens because it rains less and less in Southern California, which is due to climate change, right? But then also there are novels that are that don't have that catastrophic scenario. For instance, a novel called South Pole Station.
Good novel.
And she writes about an artist who spends a year at South Pole Station at the South Pole, and she just has to engage with a lot of scientists who work there and do their research, and then a scientist shows up who's actually a climate change denialist. So it is not necessarily a story about where we talk about melting ice caps or where there is a catastrophe, but it is a story about climate change in the sense that climate change is always a topic of discussion, and the reality of climate change is.
Especially since, if I remember correctly, climate change is being researched at that South Pole Station, right? But I think that novel then kind of taps into your other interest, because I think the transfer of knowledge is very, very present there. So we again have that interplay of like the two climate crisis narrative as a whole, and then like transfer of knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. Nowadays, with climate change being so present, right, we can of course ask the question, isn't every novel that, I don't know, it can be a romance novel, it can be a detective novel, that
could be a children's movie like Ice Age.
Exactly, could be a children's movie that mentions natural catastrophes, that mentions people dealing with the rising periods of extreme heat in their area of living. Isn't that also a climate change narrative, although it might be a romance-focused narrative, right?
Yeah.
Because we do live within climate change.
Yeah.
So
it's part of our lives now.
Exactly. So basically, everything and anything can be climate change fiction.
That is so interesting to me, because it underlines that by default, climate crisis is a global issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that answer the question of why we as American studies look at climate change? Yeah.
I mean, that question kind of answers itself.
Yeah.
Right?
You already said a little bit about a lot of these products come from the United States. And I mean, I would consider the United States to some extent to be like an opinion maker.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you accept the influence the United States has globally, and B, accept that climate change is a global issue, you basically accept that the United States has a huge influence in all questions climate change related, right? If you think about I don't want to say panic, but the outrage when Trump again exited the
surprise
Pirates Climate Accord. Paris Climate Accord. It is because if the United States doesn't go along with it, many other countries will say, and we can see that in Germany too, right? Why should we do something if they don't?
Yeah.
It's always that, which is not like, it's not a logical cause of action, right? But this is how the world works. This is how people work. And then there's another thing that I can actually draw from reading climate change fiction. And here, again, we have to distinguish between what I get from a fictional narrative that is completely imagined, but then I apply it to the real world, right? So the fictional aspect of it, in The Deluge, one of my favorite novels, in The Deluge, they talk about establishing a so-called shock collar, which basically is a huge tax on every good that is imported into the United States. Does it ring a bell? But this tax is not arbitrarily set, but it asks how much carbon was emitted to produce that product, right? And the assumption in the novel is that the United States, being such an economic power, if they do that, then other countries would have to change the way they produce because they need the US market to survive.
Yeah.
So this is the fictional side of it, right? If we look at the reality that is happening right now, all the insecurities, all the fears that are happening because of taxation that the United States implements right now, we could make the argument, or we could assume that a tax in that way would actually, or would have the power to influence how other nations produce their goods. And the United States, as a huge economy, has that power. On the other hand, we could say the EU, as a pretty large economy, might have that same power as well. But the EU does not have the global visibility, which is also something that we currently see, right? So the United States has this visibility. The United States has the economic power. And the United States has this influence on what people maybe also perceive as okay, normal, through the way they kind of feed that to us in movies.
They really
and
do
pop
shift
culture.
like public perception in that way.
Yeah, and that, like, I always have to be careful. I sometimes sound like a conspiracy theorist saying all of these things. That's not what there's no conspiracy behind that, right? There's no bigger
Plan.
plan behind that. It's just that, again, things are produced in the cultural context of the United States, and in the movies, TV shows that we watch, for instance, things that are normal in the United States are presented as normal, and then we watch it, and we perceive it as normal as well, without any agenda behind it, right? But it's just like the way it happens.
Yeah. And I think in our work at the Obama Institute, we try to reflect on that and kind of keep that in mind.
Yeah, especially our aspect of transnationalism, which has been mentioned over and over again. But then looking back at our work specifically, could you maybe say that, kind of in a sense, climate crisis narratives and our approaches thereof, especially considering transnationalism, are representative of how the American studies as an academic discipline, quote unquote, do business?
How do we do business?
I wish I knew. That's why I'm asking you.
That's a whole other episode.
You can come back on the show. We would be happy to
love
that. We'll talk about that later. So, I mean, American studies as a field, right, is inherently interdisciplinary. In order to understand the United States as an area, we have to look at it with different disciplinary angles. So we look at it from literature, from culture, from the media, from politics, from history, from also sociological aspects, right? So in itself, American studies cannot not think interdisciplinary. And also, because of these influences that we just talked about, I think it would be, well, you can look at the United States isolated, but also with it, like the United States being a nation of immigrants, right? With migration and international, transnational relationships happening, you would cut out a lot if you just it would be impossible to just look at the United States isolated, and also it would be crazy boring just to do that, right?
And you lose so much context.
Exactly. So it suggests itself to look at the United States from a transnational perspective. And the same, all of these things kind of go for climate change as well, right? Looking at climate change needs to be interdisciplinary. We cannot only look at climate change from a humanities point of view, right? I am not, like, my hubris is not that big. So when I read the title of this episode today, making sense of climate change, I thought, well, I can't. Sorry, not a climate scientist, not a physicist, not any of these things, right?
Understood.
So we need all of these people. We also need maybe economics, and we need politicians, and we need marketing specialists, and we need also the humanities to make sense of the discourses surrounding it, right? So climate change is an interdisciplinary problem that can only be solved when looking at it interdisciplinary, I don't want to call it a problem, but as the United States is something to look at in an interdisciplinary way.
You would not be wrong.
Yeah, right.
And at the same time, the United States is a transnational, or looking at the United States transnationally makes sense to understand it better. Looking at climate change transnationally makes sense because it is a global phenomenon, right? So from the ways we look at it, American studies and climate change are pretty similar.
That's amazing. Thank you.
That's a great statement. And I think with that, we can wrap it up. We have to wrap it up, actually, unfortunately. The episode is coming to an end. But before you leave.
Yes, we always have like a personal-ish question for our guests, if you're down with that.
Okay.
And again, if not, you can leave.
There's the door.
I'll just leave without saying anything. So if you hear footsteps.
She's like, mic drop.
I'm not going to answer the personal question.
So, you haven't left. That means I'm going to ask you, what does American studies mean to you personally?
It's a really broad question, and you're welcome to go deep into
to make it really personal.
The sauce.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Maybe that's a tough question. I mean, right now, what it means to me is it's my job, right? So it kind of gives me money, but it's also my purpose. I mean, I like my job, right? Is what I'm saying. I have the privilege of liking my job and having a job that I am actually interested in, and that is because American studies as a field gives me the freedom to explore all these different things. I mean, as I said, I can look at things in all different media types. I can look at things from interdisciplinary angles. I can look at environmental humanities, but also at medical medical humanities.
We've been talking for a while now.
Medical humanities is the word that I was looking for. At aging studies, I can look at race, class, gender. I can look at protest movements. I can look at politics. I can look at history. I can look at all these different things. And I'm easily bored. So
great point.
It's good for you to have the freedom to move around.
To anyone out there, if you're easily bored,
come to my classes where this will happen. Definitely.
Exactly.
So yeah, that's
a great. Sorry to interrupt, but that's a great callback to our.
Yes.
I think our first episodes in this first season, because that's almost basically exactly what we said, is like that the field is so broad, so you can go into all sorts of different directions, and that's what makes it so interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what we love about it, at least.
Yeah, right.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else? Were you done?
I was done.
Cutting you off. Okay.
So done.
So done. I want to leave, please.
We're not that bad.
I'm just scared that there will be really personal questions.
No, not more personal than that. Don't you worry.
Perfect.
Right. So yeah, I can't believe we're out of time already. This was so fun, but thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
To have you back.
Yes.
Just throwing that out there for now. But
Exactly.
yeah, I think I can speak for the both of us.
We would love
when
that.
I say that, yeah, we loved it and we thought it was incredibly interesting and insightful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And a big thank you also to you, all of our listeners. And if you want to see more content and get some behind-the-scenes action of our work here, don't forget to follow at Obama Institute on Instagram.
Right. And as always, our DMs on Instagram are open. And we're happy to engage with you. So if you have a favorite climate change narrative, drop
Tell
us a DM. Let us know. If you want Julia to come back on the show, let us know.
If you never want her to come back, also let us know.
No, please don't.
We're going to be sad. Please don't do that. All right. But with these obligatory shout outs being done, it's time to say goodbye. And until next time. Bye, guys.
We will hear you next time. Bye. Make It Make Sense is the official podcast of the Obama Institute for Transnational American Studies at JGU Mainz, Germany. This podcast is hosted by Marlene Winkler and Paulina Schlosser and edited by Paulina Schlosser. We're recording at the sound studios of the Zentrum für Audiovisuelle Produktion at JGU.
For more information on us, check out our website and don't forget to always keep up with us on Instagram at Obama Institute. Thank you for listening.